This is a story of a community on a journey of faith. It is a tale of a people who learn to contain their newfound faith in a crucible of culture, while traversing 4 continents in as many generations. Hailing from the remote towns and villages of Western India, they left their ancestral homes and traveled on bullock carts, eventually embarking on a sea-bound voyage across the Indian Ocean to an unexplored continent. Some left their homes in search of better pastures, while others sought to find a safe haven from religious strife and persecution in the wake of their recent conversion to a newfound faith. They are known as the Khojas, who originally hail from the land of Sind, now part of Pakistan, as well as from Kutch and Kathiawar, part of the modern-day state of Gujarat, India. Like many other Indians from Western Indian state of Gujarat, the Khojas now form part of the enterprising transnational community dotted all around the globe. On this journey of faith, the first challenge that confronted these Khoja pioneers was to cross the vast expanse of the Indian Ocean, often at the mercy of the northeast monsoons, in small sailing vessels, commonly known as dhows in English. Their second challenge was to establish themselves in a land practically unknown to most of the world. Today, the flourishing Khoja community around the globe is a testimony to the tenacity and resilience of those early Khoja pioneers. They have given rise to an enterprising progeny, which continues to make its mark around the world.
As I walk on the beach here in Mandvi, the port in Kutch from where many a hopeful Khoja pioneer sailed to seek new opportunities in a new land, I could not help but reflect upon the tenacity of our forefathers braving monsoons on the Indian Ocean in single-sail dhows. What motivated them to leave their ancestral lands and undertake this journey? How did these folks with a Hindu heritage convert to what they are today? Ismaili Khoja, Sunni Khoja, and Ismaili Khoja. What led to this division within the Khoja community? Where does the community go from here? Is there a possibility of breaking out of the silos the 3 Khoja communities have been living in for the past 150 or so years? I hope that this documentary will help you find answers to some of these questions.
Our story began some 650 years ago upon the arrival of a mystic by the name of Sadr Din in the region of Sind, located between the current borders of Pakistan and India. Myths abound regarding his origins and mission. The most common consensus among historians is that Sadr Din was a Dai, or missionary, of the Shia Ismaili sect, and originally came from Egypt. Other historians have instead suggested that he was a Sufi, a mystic from Persia. Here Sadr Din settled in Sind, where he lived among the rich Hindu landowners of the Indian Lohana caste. The Lohanas are known to have descended from the mythic Indian king, Rama's son, by the name of Love. They were known as Thakurs, a phonetic corruption of the Indian title Thakur, meaning Lord or Master. Thakurs believed that the Hindu god Lord Vishnu had lived through 9 incarnations on this earth, and that they were waiting for the 10th. Sadr Din successfully convinced them that he brought with him the good tidings of the coming of the 10th incarnation of Lord Vishnu they were waiting for, and his name was Ali. This is believed to be a reference to the cousin and successor of Prophet Muhammad. This was his ingenious, and some may say disingenuous, way of converting a number of Lohana Thakurs to a new faith called Satpanth, meaning true path. Satpanth is a peculiar mystical admixture of Sufic Hindu beliefs. the essence of Sadruddin's teachings, were preserved in a book called Das Autar, which, until recently, was considered a primary text for the Khoja Ismaili followers of the Aga Khan. The new faith of Satpanth needed a new identity. Pir Sadruddin obliged and bestowed upon these converts a new title. They were no longer to call themselves Dakars. Instead, they would now be addressed with the honorific title of Khoja, a Persian word close to the meaning of the word Takar. This name, Khoja, eventually became Khoja, a phonetic corruption of the original title. Some historians contend that the name Khoja was derived from the Hindi word khoj, which means to dig out or search, perhaps suggesting that a Khoja is one who is engrossed in the search of truth in religion. In addition to the writings in Das Autar, many of Sadruddin's teachings also survive through ginans, or hymns, which have for long been a central part of the religious practices of the Khoja Ismaili community. The term ginan is believed to be derived from the Sanskrit word gnan, meaning knowledge or gnosis.
The reverence with which the Khojas held their peers, as narrated in this Ginan, is also illustrated by the magnificent shrines dotted around Sindh, Kutch and Kathiawar, such as the one here in Kera. From the 15th to the 19th century, many peers followed Sadruddin, such as Pir Ghulam Ali Shah of Kera and Pir Dadu of Bhuj, who brought the Satpanthi Khojas closer to the Islamic faith. Since we are talking of the evolution of the Khojas hundreds of years ago, I needed to trace the steps of our Satpanthi Khoja ancestors. So my next port of call is here in Mumbai. Major events occurred here in the mid-1800s, eventually leading to the development of the three distinct Khoja communities as we know them today. This is the famous area of Dongri here, a bustling part of Mumbai. One could call this the epicenter of the Khoja Shia Ismaili community. I'm here standing right at the entrance of the Hazrat Abbas Street, and this leads into the various institutions of our community. In those days, the Palagali Dongri areas were known as leading trade centers of the growing Mumbai metropolis. This bustling area had one of the largest concentrations of Khojas outside Kutch and Kathiawar, and hence it was rightfully known as the Khoja Mohalla. There is so much Khoja history all over Dongri. Interestingly enough, there is a monument in the city that pays homage to Imam Hussain, the grandson of the Prophet. He was martyred in Karbala for standing up to the tyrant ruler of the time by the name of Yazid. I had to stop for a brief second so I could take account of what the sign read. When walking around the Dongri area, I found three historic monuments located within walking distance of each other: the Khoja Ismaili Jamaat Khana, the Khoja Sunni Masjid, and the Khoja Shia Masjid. They look strikingly similar with the early 20th century Indo-Muslim architecture.
These three distinct places of worship allude to the early strife within the Khoja community when it splintered into three fragments. Today, the overall number of the Khojas is very small, considering that there are over 200 million Shia Muslims in the world today. Of those, there are some 400,000 Ismaili Khojas and 150,000 Ithna Ashari Khoja, and there are less than 10,000 Sunni Khoja. It all started with the arrival in Mumbai of the Aga Khan Hassan Ali Shah, the 46th Imam of the Ismailis. Also known as Hassan Ali Shah Mahalati, he was the son-in-law of the Persian king Fatah Ali Shah and the governor of Kirman province in Persia. Internal power struggles and political intrigue between Britain and the Persian king resulted in the relocation of the Aga Khan in Mumbai, facilitated by the British. Passing via Sindh, Kutch, and Kathiawar, this Persian nobleman eventually settled in Mumbai in 1848. His presence had cataclysmic impact on the Khoja community in Mumbai, sending ripples to parts of Kutch and Kathiawar in India and as far as East Africa. At the time, the Khoja community had remnants of the Sadpanthi beliefs, Shia rituals, and Sunni practices. When the Aga Khan attempted to streamline practices and control the assets of the community, he faced dissension from some wealthy quarters. To reinforce his authority, he asked the Khojas to sign a written pledge requiring them to formally accept Ismaili doctrine. Most complied, but a group of Khojas resisted, claiming that Khojas had always been Sunni. After a decade of debates and dissension, a group of wealthy Khojas, led by merchant Prince Habib Ibrahim, filed a suit in the Mumbai High Court in 1866 against Aga Khan. This case, famously known as the Aga Khan case, was heard by Sir Joseph Arnold. In his 1866 judgment, Judge Arnold ruled that the Khoja community is a sect of people whose ancestors were Hindu in origin, which was converted to, and has throughout abided in, the faith of the Shia Imami Ismailis, which has always been, and still is bound, by ties of spiritual allegiance to the hereditary Imams of Ismailis. The judge also upheld the Aga Khan's right as a spiritual leader to the ownership of community assets, as opposed to those being held as communal property by the Khoja community, as it had been for centuries. Ironically, a British judge who had little or no understanding of Khoja origins or culture largely sealed the fate of the Khoja, permanently dividing the once united community.
In 1860, some Khojas went for a pilgrimage to the holy city of Karbala. A chance meeting between Devji Jamal, a wealthy Khoja businessman, and a South Indian scholar by the name of Mullah Qadar Hussain was to have a long-lasting impact on the Khoja community. The group was introduced to the prominent Shia scholar of the time by the name of Ayatollah Zainul Abidin Mazandarani. During their discussions, it emerged that the Khoja Ismaili Sadpanthi beliefs were not quite in keeping with Shia doctrine. As a result, at the behest of Ayatollah Mazandarani and the financial support by Devji Jamal, Mullah Qadar Hussain arrived in Mumbai. His preaching set in motion the conversion of many Khojas across Sindh, Kutch, Kathiawar, and East Africa, and thus evolved the Khoja Shia ethnic community as we know it today. Concurrent with the schisms in the Khoja community in Mumbai and elsewhere in the subcontinent, by 1870s, two Khoja groups had emerged in Karachi. One followed the Aga Khan, and the other group had stopped recognizing the Aga Khan as a spiritual head. The assassinations in Mumbai were actually preceded by a killing in Karachi. On March 2, 1876, a prominent Khoja figure who lived here in this house was attacked by an assailant with a knife. He survived the murderous assault, but 2 years later a bullet was fired at him, and alas, he succumbed to his injuries and passed away. This was Lalan Aladina, the first person in the community to sacrifice his life for practicing the Shia ethnic faith.
In addition to offering the first martyr for their beliefs, the Karachi Khoja community has yet another distinction. Located a few yards from the Khoja Masjid in Karadar, this house, known as Wazir Mansion, was owned by Jinabai Punja. In this house was born a Khoja Shia Ithna Ashari boy on December 25, 1876, who grew up to carve out a new nation and change the map of the world. This was none other than Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the founding father of Pakistan. Karachi is the ancestral city of the Sindhi Khojas, who have played a significant role in the evolution of the Khoja community ever since its inception. In the following decades, while Haji Naji and other students of Mullah Qadir Hussain were busy in conveying the message of the Ithna Ashari faith, the Khoja community was undergoing another change. Many Khojas were choosing to migrate from the Indian subcontinent to the east coast of Africa. As the long-lasting spate of droughts continued to take a heavy toll upon the people of Kutch and Kathiawar, in common with their compatriots, the Khojas began to migrate in ever-increasing numbers in search for livelihood in eastern Africa.
I always wondered as to how our forefathers traveled from the interior towns and villages of Kutch and Kathiawar to the ports of Porbandar and Mandvi to embark on these dhows going to eastern Africa. To find out, I visited a farm near Talaja, some 30 miles west of Bhavnagar. It is said that a typical journey on these bullock carts would take at least 2 to 3 days. The bulls continued traveling at night while the passengers enjoyed a night's sleep. This is because the bulls are known to unwaveringly travel on a straight path once a direction is set. Indeed, an important lesson in vision for the community.
Merchants from the Indian subcontinent had been trading with the East African coastal towns for centuries. But it wasn't until the early 1800s that Khojas decided to take to the sea in search of new, lucrative opportunities. Economic hardships combined with religious strife within the Khoja community became the key factors in this migration. For many young men who had little economic opportunity, sailing to Africa must have been a thrilling prospect. Alidina Visram, then a 12-year-old orphan, ventured to sail to Zanzibar as a stowaway from Kira in 1863. He is an amazing rags-to-riches story. Alidina Visram and Ismaili Khoja and his business partner Nasser Virji and Ithna Ashari Khoja were among the first to venture inland as far as Uganda. They were so successful that Alidina Visram eventually became known as the uncrowned king of Uganda. Before the early 1900s, the dhow captains sailed without compasses, relying solely on the position of the sun and the stars. Oftentimes, strong monsoon winds and the huge waves threatened to capsize the dhows. Waxing lyrical about his sailing experience in his autobiography, entrepreneur Nanji Kalidas, who sailed to Madagascar in 1901, wrote, "The tiny vessel was at the mercy of the tempestuous ocean, which heaved and howled like a mad and intoxicated giant. We shook with the terror of obvious death. The fury of the elements could only be overcome if God helped us in the impending doom." The dhow captains would try to stay as close as possible to the coastline. Disease and occasional attacks from pirates also claimed the lives of many aspiring migrants.
आज पैसेंजर्स હતા આપણે વાણોની અંદર એ લોકો કેવી રીતે રહેતા હતા સૂતા હતા
હવે જો પેસેન્જર લે એટલે અમે વધારે પેસેન્જર ન ઉપાડીએ શું કામ કે પાણી પીવાનો બંદોબસ્ત કરવો પડે ને પાણીનો એટલે 15 કે 20 કે 25 જાજા તો 30 એવા પેસેન્જર અમે લઈએ પછી આ વાહનનો જે નીચેનો ભાગ છે ને એમાં પાર્ટીશન કરીને આ બાંકડો આપણો કેમ છે આ આપણો આ એવા બનાવી દઈએ એમાં બધે ના એટલે રાત પડે તો બધે જાના એમાં એ સૂઈ જાય 15 જાના આ બાજુ 15 જાના ઓ બાજુ 30 માણસો એમાં 22 માણસો હોય 22 માણસો પર હોય પણ એક બાઈ માણસને ન લઈએ, બે બાઈ માણસ ભેગી ખપે.
અને જ્યાં પહોંચતા ત્યાર સુધી રાશન કેટલા દિવસનું લઈ જતા?
અમને લાગે કે મહિના દી અમે પહોંચશું, એક મહિનો દી પહોંચશું તો 2 મહિનાનું અમે રાશન લઈએ. એક કપ પાણીનો હોય ને એ અમને આપે પીવાનો આખા દિવસમાં. એવા 21 દી કાઢ્યા અમે. અત્યારે આ પીવાનું પાણી મને 4-6 દિવસ સુધી ન મળે તો હું મરી ન જાઉં. મને તમે પાણી પૂરી નાખો, આમાં પાણી ન દેજો, 6 દિવસ સુધી મને કાંઈ ન થાય. એક જ કપ પાણી નો મળે, એ કપથી આખો દિવસ કાઢવાનો હોય, બીજે દી બીજો કપ.
I have always been amazed by the tales of our ancestors ever since I heard my father and uncles talk about my grandfather, Hassan Walji, and his brothers, Hirji, Ramtullah, and Muhammad Ali, who arrived in Lamu in the late 1800s. It was fascinating to hear how they navigated through crocodiles and hippos in the Tana River in dugout canoes or horis to trade with the local tribes in remote villages. As we sail into Lamu harbor, I try to visualize the sights that these Khoja pioneers would have seen. It is really hard to explain, let alone feel, the emotion they must have felt upon seeing land after a month of living in a dhow, tired, relieved, and pining for some fresh water for a bath, yet with full anticipation of a new life in a faraway land. Little did they realize that the dhow journey and the landing on this very beach of Lamu would be the genesis of a transnational Khoja community soon to be spread across 5 continents.
Today, the Khoja wanderlust is as active as ever. Only the mode of transport has changed from dhows and donkeys to planes and private jets, as the Khojas ply the skies in continuous search for better pastures. As it was then, there are still no vehicles on the island, and even today, traditional wooden dhows are offloaded on the seafront and goods carried by porters through the town's narrow alleyways. Upon their arrival in Africa, the Khoja pioneers were faced with the daunting prospect of starting new life within the milieu of African and Arab cultures. To challenge them even further, they were subjected to German rule in Tanganyika, British rule in Kenya and Uganda, French rule in Madagascar, Italian rule in Somalia, Belgian rule in the Congo, and Portuguese rule in Mozambique as they explored the jungles of eastern Africa. An East African poet, Kersi Rostamji, in his ode, An Indian Dukawala on the East African Plains, eloquently captures the spirit of these days. Black water, sleeping sickness, diseases, fevers many and unknown ills. Undeterred by lions, leopards, and snakes, by hyenas, owls, bats, and other nightly beasts, to strive and to pave a new way and life to be had. Into Kenya, Uganda, Tanganyika, and far inland they also spread. Now in the Mvitu of the stark wilderness, a small Mombati duka, a shop in the front, with a couple of tiny rooms in the back. In front a place from which to work and trade, to lay his tired body in a rear room to bed. The Indian Dukawala, though stopped, not where he was now, for on and on he went to build greater enterprises. All through the history of the community, Khoja women seem to be conspicuously absent in the formal historical records of the Khojas. Yet it is these unsung heroines who have played a silent yet crucial role in making the community what it is today. As the families were torn apart owing to conflicts and dissension due to the doctrinal difference between the Ithna Ashari and Ismaili paths, it is the women who patiently bore the brunt of tensions in the extended family household, trying to keep the peace. Secondly, as Khoja men migrated to Africa, they left behind many young brides who waited for years, sometimes even a decade, before they could join their husbands. Then there were mothers who sold their heirloom jewelry to pay for the passage for the sons to go to Africa when the family was under dire economic straits.
Today, members of the Khoja Shia ethnic community have excelled in the professions. They own major corporations and have established world-class industries. They are serious players in the international commodity and financial markets around the world. Some have made it on the Forbes list, and others have won accolades as brilliant academics. For his outstanding research in the Antarctic, one even has a glacier named after him. One founded a new country. Another Khoja composed its national anthem, and even had its fellow Khoja bankroll this new nation when it had no money to run the government. Today, they mingle with heads of state and endeavor to influence policy as they walk the corridors of power. They espouse social justice causes and speak up for the oppressed, while its leadership engages with diplomatic missions and policymakers. Their community leadership amongst men and women is the engine that keeps the wheels of progress turning.
When we have members of our community from so far away, from Australia to North America, from India, Pakistan to Africa, and even in Dubai, our community is now based all across the world, from every single corner of the globe. How will we keep such a community together in the future? Another very important question for us to reflect on. What will our community look like in 10, 20, 50, and even 100 years? What evolution will take place in our community?
Where will our community be in the next 30 or 50 years? Well, I don't have a crystal ball, but as the Danish philosopher said, life must be understood backwards and it must be lived forwards. In addition to their trait of generosity and resilience, they had another remarkable trait, the spirit of inquiry. It was at these watershed moments in the history of our ancestors that they put their thinking caps on. When Pir Sadruddin came to Sindh, they were willing to be moved from their comfort zones and make a change. Centuries later, when they were again faced with the issue of their belief and their practice, they were not afraid to have that spirit of inquiry and make the change again. This trait of not accepting the status quo was not just in matters of faith. When famine and drought engulfed the Kutch and Kathiawar society, they were willing to make a change. They migrated across the ocean to Africa and made a new life for themselves. It is my firm conviction that if we continue to keep this spirit of inquiry alive, we'll be able to progress on this path, on this journey of faith that we started some 7 centuries ago. If not, then we will become mere joyriders on this merry-go-round of history.
Hope you enjoyed watching this show, produced by Mark Media Productions. For more information, please visit our website at www.markresource.org. Thank you for watching.